Good afternoon, gentlemen, fellow Rhode Islanders, fellow Americans. Gentlemen, we actually share something in common. We're long-distance commuters. I teach on the faculty at National Defense University in Washington, and in fact, I was on the plane with Congressman Langerman this Friday.
Welcome home.
Thank you. You too. I guess we could sense from kind of applause we've had so far this afternoon that there are not too many fans of the Trump administration. There's obviously a lot of disaffection in this room, but you know, it's disaffection that led the current president to be elected, rightly or wrongly. So unless that disaffection is addressed, we'll have maybe another Trump, but maybe another name in the same situation. So we have to address this underlying cause, which I think, according to a lot of what I've read, has to do with politics as usual, if you will. What I want to tie, though, the issue I want to tie into, link to the last speaker in a way, it has to do with corporate influence. I am very concerned about the projected increase in the budget for the Department of Defense. I don't think anybody would disagree that a key responsibility of the federal government is protecting our country, providing national security, protecting its citizens. I think Republicans, Democrats, Independents will all agree with that. But we do not need a bigger military. We need a smarter military. And part of the reason why we have the big military we have and the big DoD defense is there is a culture in DoD. There's a culture of abundance. It's a culture of abundance. And that is, and I'm a civilian employee of DoD. I've been at various DoD installations. Clearly there are discrepancies across DoD, but in general, there's almost a culture of entitlement that takes advantage of the goodwill of taxpayers to fund our national defense, to not be very discretionary in the use of funds that it receives. And if it receives more funds, we're just going to keep feeding the beast. So we're really going to change that. And connected to that, of course, isn't just we're going to increase the budget of DoD. We're going to take money from all of the other things that we do in government that make our country actually great. It's not our military that makes us great, and maybe I'm speaking to the choir here. You know, it's not our military. It's our public support of housing, or it's our public support of education, the arts, humanities, and so on. We have a country that's worth fighting for. We have a country that's worth spending more money than all, you know what, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but, you know, our DoD budget is larger than the budgets of many of our adversaries combined. So, one other thing I want to mention is and then there may be a misunderstanding in terms of how the military views the budget, and I'm just sharing this with you from my experience where I've been. My sister recently wrote me, because she knows I'm teaching at DoD, and we have over half of our students are military officers. And she said, oh, well, the military must be very happy that, you know, Trump's going to give them more money. That's not the case. Over the years, I've taught many military officers, hundreds, if maybe 1,000, particularly in the 03 to 06 range. And one of the things we do, and I was over here in Newport and did it, we do a national security strategy exercise where the students look out 10 and 20 years, they try to project, and maybe you're aware of this exercise. You know, what are our threats out there? What does our strategy have to be? And how do we have to allocate our defense money and our money in the federal budget in order to address those needs and those challenges and threats? Inevitably, and I would say 90% of those military officers, they they do not advocate for increased spending of the M and the dime. And you know what the dime is. So the dime, ladies and gentlemen, you think about national defense. Our national defense is secured not simply by the military, but by the D, diplomacy, I, information, and the military, and E, economic. Okay? The military, these military students in this exercise will tend to allocate more money to these other sources of influence, much less to the military. So, with all of that said, my concern to you today, gentlemen, is talked about, we got to change politics as usual. You're politicians. So how are we going to change politics as usual? How are we going to decrease the influence of the corporate lobbyists that the previous gentleman was kind of referring to? And how do we kind of reduce the power of the military-industrial complex so that we really have a country that's worth securing? Thank you.
One of the points, among many that were so compelling of your comments, was the issue that national security is not just the Department of Defense. It's so many other agencies. And what is becoming the most famous quote in Washington today is by the present Secretary of Defense, General Mattis, then General, now Secretary, who said, if you don't fund the State Department, then you're going to buy me more ammunition. Now, he understands that. Interestingly enough, one of the most, in fact, maybe the only person that will publicly talk about the effects of climate change in the administration is the Secretary of Defense. The EPA director doesn't even believe it. So it's very interesting. But your point is extremely well taken. We have to look at, first, internal to the Department of Defense, what reforms that we can make that will, over time, save money or make our spending more efficient. I don't think anyone will stand, Republican or Democrat, Senator McCain or myself, and say, we got there, we're already there. We've tried that, and we've run into opposition. We've run into political opposition with a small p and political opposition with a big P. Last fall, we were trying to get through a pilot program, for example, on commissaries, just to see if we could manage them better, not the traditional way through the services, but through some type of big retail vendor. That got shut down because of the built-in sense. And you said it very well. We owe these young men and women and the veterans so much that this is they serve, and it's true, that they serve so much. We'll get veterans in this audience. But we have to get our handles there too. The other thing we have to recognize is that we've been in conflict now for 15 plus years. And we have a lot of young men and women, they were young 15 years ago, now they're in their late 30s, who've been deployed constantly, their families have been deployed. That goes to our obligation to them. We want to make sure we do that too. Yeah. There's a lot of things, and we owe them a great deal. One of the things we try to do, which is very, very difficult in the context of this whole sequestration, is to make sure that at least if we spend X on DOD, we're spending the same on our non-defense agencies, including state, education, a whole range. Now, I have had to vote against defense. I'm the senior Democrat on the committee, and usually in the committee, it's the chairman and the senior Democrat are like shoulder to shoulder constantly. I've had to vote in the past on the floor of the Senate against my own bill because it didn't meet that test of 50-50. Ultimately, we prevailed. Ultimately, we got the level of funding. And we are now starting off on another very challenging budget set of issues. The administration just came up this past week, and they would like to spend in this year an additional $24-25 billion for defense and take it from non-defense, including state, including homeland security. It's very, very challenging, but we're in the midst of this whole struggle. So I can make a few points. One, we do recognize the service and sacrifice these young men and women. They've earned a great deal. Two, we have to look for efficiencies within departments, across the government. We don't want inefficient programs in any agency. And then we also have to see where is the wear and tear over these 15 years, not just in personnel, but in equipment, in flying hours. Do we need to do things so that these young men and women, when they go in, it's not a fair fight? We don't want to send any of our folks into a fair fight. We want them to go in with the best equipment, the best training, and everything else. I'd like to tell you there's a very simple solution. It's not, but it's going to take a lot of the kind of infighting and political jockeying that we've been doing, I've been trying to do for the last 20 plus years. Jim?
I'll just say that, look, we set up priorities as a nation, that kind of budget that's produced and that's ultimately approved. And clearly the budget that was the skinny budget will be, the full budget will be coming out in May, that the administration has put forward, shows that their priorities are out of balance. We've got to do better.